Hey guys, and welcome to How to Paint Krondys for Stormcast Eternals in Age of Sigmar. Okay, well I promised to do this one, so here we are. We're painting a model that you don't really want to paint. In this case, we've got this dragon here, Krondys, and I painted Karazai before in the hobby vlog, and so we're going to go through the actual process of painting this one. So we're using a lot of dry brushing, we're going to be using airbrushing for the wings, and just going through some techniques and some tactics to complete a model that you don't necessarily want to paint, in this case a dragon. Now in your case it might be a different mini that you don't really like to paint, but all these techniques you can use to speed things up. Most of it's pretty obvious, but not for everyone, right? It depends on what stage of the hobby that you're in. So we're going to go through it today. Now for Krondys, we're going to be doing a blue black rather than a neutral black, so we've got some blue grays down there to go through, and for the wings we're going to be using Grimnar purple, corpse pale and white. And again, if you don't have an airbrush, you can use dry brushing to do this. You just start with the base of the Grimnar purple and then dry brush up the successive layers of corpse pale up into white, but today we'll use the airbrush. So it should be a bit of fun, as much fun as you can have painting something you don't want to paint. We are going to go through this a little bit differently. Normally I would go through each step and do the whole mini in each step, like you might normally do on batch painting minis. In this case, we're going to really focus in on areas and complete them and move on to the next area. In specific, the body, so the anatomy of the dragon. And this helps you to set up micro goals to complete things as you go, and gives you that little bit of completion as you go through the model, so you don't feel so overwhelmed with the whole process. So we'll be going through each step, but focusing on different areas and moving around the model to get it done. Now, for time frame, I'm looking at about a 2-day job for this one, like I did with Karazai. It might go out into 3 days, but we'll see how it goes. And that's a good idea when you're doing a model that you don't really want to paint too much. Setting up boundaries or a loose sort of time frame that you'd like to get it done in. You don't have to stick to that, but it's a nice way just to frame it in your mind so you don't feel sort of so overwhelmed by the process, especially for a larger model. So yeah, I hope this will help people out there looking for videos on models that are daunting for them, but we should end up with a nice result, and he'll fit in really well once he's done, I think, with the other one in the collection. So yeah, without too much more waffling on, let's get started, eh? Okay, so to begin with, we're here at the airbrush step. Now you can dry brush these steps with a large dry brush if you want to, but here we're doing it with an airbrush. So we're going to start with that Grimnar purple and put that down as a base. So we're just fading it into those wing membranes and getting us a nice dark purple there. And that's to simulate the blood under the skin, that sort of thing, to give the wings their sort of, bat-like or wing-like look to them. And so we just go through and put that in and get that nice fade happening. If you were dry brush, if you're going to do the dry brush method, you would just paint this step on and then dry brush the next steps. So then once we've got that down, then we're just putting in some Grimnar purple with the corpse pale, about a 50-50 mix into the airbrush. Now you don't need to clean out the airbrush through these steps. You can just add it in, and that will give you that kind of color. We're not looking for a perfect one here. We're just getting it roughly thereabouts, and then fading that in again, and being conscious of the edges of each of the wing membrane sections, so you get that sort of shadow running down the line of the sort of the bone structures there, that sort of thing. And then once we're happy with that result, then we move into the sort of, it's like off corpse pale, basically corpse pale with still a bit of that Grimnar purple mixed in the pot there. And then we're using this as kind of like our first highlight step. So we're building it out to the edges. You'll see me fading it out and creating more definition between each of those segments, so you get a shadow coming out. If you're dry brushing this again, you'd be dry brushing out to the ends, that sort of thing, to build it up. And then once we've got that, now you would wash out your airbrush pot and put in the corpse pale proper. So now it's basically pure corpse pale, and you're now using that as a really strong little highlight there, and building in some of that color to punch up the wings and give them their look. Because up until this point it's relatively desaturated. So we just build that out, and then finally, for a final highlight step, we mix in white. And so with that white, it's roughly a 25 to 75 mix, that sort of thing, just a bit of white mixed in. And now you're just doing the very ends. You'll see me just come through and just hit those the end parts of the membrane, fading down through the centers, that sort of thing, just to give a little bit of pop, because bright colors, when they dry, they tend to darken a little bit. So we just want to punch that up a little bit brighter, so we get a full range of color through those wings, and then we should be good. If you're dry brushing this step, again, just fading it out to the edges there in preparation for a final dry brush layer. So here we are on the painting table, and now we've got our white out and that corpse pale on the palette, and a little bit of paper. And now we're going to be dry brushing a final stage of highlighting across those wings. So we get a nice large dry brush there, and mix a bit of that white with a little touch of the corpse pale mixed in, so it's a little bit off white, and then rub it out on the paper, and then go through and dry brush the wings. And so you're just trying to pick out those edges and give yourself just a little bit more brightness there, so we don't have to go back later. So this is basically all we're doing with the wings. We're not going any further. This is obviously a speed run where we're trying to do this efficiently, so we're not going to spend too much more time. That should be efficient to get you a result that works overall. So yeah, we're going to move on from that and get onto that base. So I like to get the base out early, because we're going to be coming back in and doing a lot of work on the dragon, and I don't really want the base colors to affect the feet, the contact points of the model to the base. Generally speaking, if you want to add weathering and that sort of thing to a mini, you want to do that at the end and apply it over the top of the clean work. So you sort of paint it clean, and then you add the discolorations and the dirt and so on, if you want to do that sort of weathering. It's much more controllable that way, and you understand the process better, so I would leave it off. So instead, what we got here is my classic basing that you'll have seen on every single video. I won't go into it too much detail. It's on every video. You're probably sick of seeing it, but anyway, it's a dark gray, so we're using the army painter colors here. So necromancer cloak, dungeon gray, uniform gray, and then white. And so you're just basing it with the necro, and then dry brushing up successive layers. You don't need to wipe anything off here with this dry brushing steps, just like with the airbrush. You're allowing the paint before to influence the color on the brush, so you're just dabbing it on, rubbing it off, and then dry brushing across the surface of the base and building up those lights. And then once you've got a good solid amount of that color down all the way up into white, then we move into what I like to do is here staining it with some biltane and sepia shade mixed with the Lamia medium. So you put two little drops of the color either side with a bit of gap in the middle, and then put the Lamia medium there, and then you'll see me dragging those two together to form different variations of the color. So you'll have some that are brown, green, and then a mixture of the two. And then you just randomly dab that around the base and give yourself a variety of mottled color. So as it dries, you get different intensities and variety of that over the base, and you can drag it down the sides of little bits of rock and so on and rubble to give you the sort of drips and that sort of thing. And it just adds a little bit of that almost like a mossy or sort of overgrown feeling to that sort of ashen base, and that just helps brighten it up a bit. You'll be amazed at how much of a difference that makes to a grey base, just adding a little bit of color in there. And you can actually use other shades as well. That actually works quite well, but I find that the green and brown is a really good one for it. So yeah, that should get it all done nicely. And now with Krondys, he has those little armor pieces. So we're going back into my classic armor for Stormcast. So anyone that's watching these videos will know exactly what's going to be coming next. You'll see me doing it. We're using that Runelord brass as the base, painting out all the armor in that color. And you might do a couple of coats here. It's important to get a nice, good, strong color down. If this was a normal Stormcast mini, you could spray it with Runelord brass spray, but here we're going to be hand painting it on. So once you've got a really good solid base down, then we move into our first shade step. So we've got that sepia shade mixed with the Lamia medium, and you just go through and just wash this down. So we're getting just a little bit of discoloration, and we're getting a little bit of that intensity of the shade, and some shadows forming in all of the grooves and crevices across the armor, and just building up that color. And once we've got a good base of that, then again we move into the Nuln Oil. Now again, the same thing here. We dilute it with the Lamia medium. Both of these steps you're looking at probably go, let's say 2 or 3 drops of the shade to maybe 1 or 2 drops of the Lamia, and that should be plenty. And this again is a wash, and it just helps darken the shadows down. You're going to end up with a sort of oily color, so you'll get a little bit of browns, a little bit of blacks, rather than just doing one or the other. I like to split these steps up, and that way you can control the amounts over the surface. And so once we've got all that nicely done and it's all dry, then we move into a dry brush step. So this is important for the armor because it helps buff it back up. The shades are going to dull down the surface and lose the shine. So we come in here with some Stormcast Silver or similar, and you know, classic way of dry brushing. Put the paint on the brush, rub it all off on a bit of paper or something, and then we dry brush over the surface. And you're trying to hit those edges. You're not trying to turn this thing to silver. You're just trying to catch all those edges and give yourself a little bit of highlights there. And this is going to be like a rough highlight. So we're going to come in later and do our sharp line highlights with a brush, but this is to help give us a little bit of shine. And now we're at my favorite part of the process, which is the color glazing. So we've got that crimson, the purple, and the blue shades from GW, and we're starting with that crimson. And you want about a 3-to-1 now, so 3 drops of Lamia medium to 1 drop of the shade. So it's very thin, very transparent. You put some on the brush, rub most of it off, so it's quite a small amount on your brush. You're not washing the surface now. You're placing those colors into the areas you want to see some discoloration. So you know, definitely in the grooves and around those areas, but you're going to fade it across the flat areas as well and sort of get a gradual color fade into the grooves, so you get some discoloration. And so as we move through, you're going to hit the crimson, and then you're going to move into the purple. And so with the purple, you know, you're going to do less. So here we're going to be hitting, you know, some of the deeper areas. You might want to do a fade across the side of the armor there, that sort of thing. So you get sort of red, purple, and then into the dark colors. And then again, finally, with the blue, now we're hitting less of these areas. So we're looking for spots where maybe the shadows aren't dark enough, you know, areas where you want to even get, where you're seeing that red and purple, you might add a little bit of the blue in so you get the full spectrum, almost like the armor's been heated. So you're getting that discolor, that rainbow effect. And that can be quite interesting. So it's really an aesthetic judgment. You're just going around and picking out areas, and it's less and less as you go. So these definitely aren't washes. You're trying to capture some interest in the armor and give yourself a little bit of discoloration here and there, just to add that interest and make it look really cool. And then finally, we move into the highlight step. Now this step is the most important. You definitely need to do this, otherwise you're going to have a very dull model. So we come back in with that Stormcast Silver and a fine detail brush, get yourself comfortable, and then you'll see me just go through and highlight all those edges. So you use the brush, the side of the brush, you know, across the edge to hit that nice fine line, or you use the tip of the brush and drag towards you to get that nice sharp line highlight. So you're just moving around and hitting all those main raised edges. You don't have to get everywhere. The beauty of that earlier dry brush step means that you've already got some highlighting around the model, so you don't need to do every edge, but all the main ones where the light is hitting. So the ones that are the big broadest areas that are facing upwards, they're the ones that you want to hit, so that when the light hits the model, you get that brightness coming back in, and you should get a really nice result. And then now we need to move on to that dragon. So before we get into the colors, we're going to just go back and re-black out the dragon and clean it up. So we've got a nice, good, solid base to work from. So you got a lot of overspray, different things like that. The metallics going on the body of the dragon. So we just use that Abaddon black or any similar black, and just paint out the dragon just to give it a nice, good, solid black base, and redefine those edges, especially around the wings, that sort of thing, and just clean it up, ready to go for our blue-gray steps. All right, so first up we have our dry brush steps. So we've got, you know, that paper out again, and on the palette we've got some night blue, some of that dark gray blue, that pale gray blue, and white. So we're starting off with that really dark blue gray, oh sorry, not starting with that, sorry, we're starting with the night blue, and we're going to be just dry brushing the dragon up, and you'll see me just go around and doing that. You're not really going to see this very much, but it does just shift the black to dark blue, and that's an important part of this, because it just gives an overall sort of blueness there without it being too strong. So once we've got that dry brush down, then we move into that dark blue gray, and that's our first main step that you'll really see the difference as you're dry brushing it across the the surface. So you're going to just go through that and heal those areas. Try not to hit the armor or the other spots, the wings, etc. You can change the size of the dry brush as you go through this for the different areas, and just get that nice base down to that dark blue-gray. And then we're moving into that pale grey blue. And so again, you don't need to wash out the brush here. We're just dabbing it on and then dabbing it off, and you'll get a sort of mixed result anyway. And now you're focusing more on those raised areas, the areas that are facing upwards, that sort of thing, the main sections of each of those muscle groups, and getting a nice good sort of highlight going there. And then finally, as you move past that, we move into the white stage. So you just dab a bit of white on. It's going to be affected by the colors before it, so it won't be a pure white, and you're getting sort of almost like a mid-tone really, and you're just dry brushing it now, the very raised areas across the dragon, just giving yourself a little bit of brightness there, and setting ourselves up when we come back in with the line edge highlights, which is where we're going to do most of our work, and get a nice sharp result for those focal points. Okay, so now we're moving into the line highlighting. Now the strategy here is to only hit the main areas of this dragon, so just the top surfaces. Anything underneath or anything like that we're going to leave. So this reduces the surface area you have to paint. So you'll see me only painting like the main scales down the back, the scales on the arm, etc. Hands, feet, the end of the tail, head, around the top of the chest and shoulder area where the little nodules are, but nowhere else. So we're really reducing the amount we actually have to line highlight to really bump this up and give it a sharp result. So you'll see me come in with that 50-50 mix of that dark blue gray and the gray blue, and getting that base line highlight down. And once we've got a good result there, we move into the off gray blue, which is just influenced a little bit from that darker color, and you're just receding the lines down to the edges. So you're doing less and less of the line highlighting as you get towards the brighter colors, and you're trying to just really nail down those highlights and just bring it up to a bright result. So now we're moving into that straight sort of gray blue color, and again just doing less and less of those edges down those armor plates, and trying to get that nice sharp result. So fine detail brush, take your time, drag it towards you using the edge of the brush, the tip of the brush, and getting that nice fine sharp highlight. And then moving into our final stages of sort of almost spot highlights. So we've got some white mixed in now with that grey blue, and again really just focusing on the tips and the edges to really bump up that brightness and get it looking really interesting. So you've got a nice fade from dark to light, and you're going to see a very big difference between those armor plates and the softer dry brushing that's next to it. So now we've got a bit of a variation there, which is also nice for the eye as you look at the model. So you've got now a variation of soft and hard edge highlights. And then finally, for that little punchy end result, we've got more white mixed in, and that's really just a spot highlight. So just the tip of the brush, just touching those edges, the very tips of all of those armor plates, and just getting a little bit of sharpness there and definition. So you're going to get the full range of color. And so once you've done that area, now we're going to start to move around the model. So one of the strategies here, as you've noticed, is I just stuck with painting just that area down the back. So, when you're doing a model that you don't like and you want to try to get through it, rather than doing that one step on the entire model at this stage, we're now going to be honing in and focusing on just one area and then completing it, then moving on to the next area, completing it, moving on to the next area. So these steps are much more focused, and this allows you to do micro goals and get things done. So as you move through that back, you're then moving on to the tail, as you're seeing me do, and just completing the tail, like getting it all the way to that completion on that small bit, then taking a break, and then moving on to the hands, and then doing the hands, and that sort of thing, or the feet, etc., and moving around and just completing those areas and getting them done. Because one of the things that can happen when you're painting a model that you don't really want to paint is you can get that burnout, right? So by reducing down the area you have to paint, and that sort of thing, it gives you those moments where you can stop, take a break, come back to it, and you've completed something. So with the head, just focusing on the head, getting that done, etc. And before you know it, each of those main points on the model will be done, and you'll get a really nice result. So we're not line highlighting the entire model, we're just looking for those main key areas and really the upward facing areas. So not even the whole body, it's just literally those main points across the top of the thigh and the knee, the tops of the feet, the tops of the the hands, the end of the tail, the head, and a little bit down the neck there, and down that body, down the back there, down the tail where the armor plates are, and on the arms you'll see those little armor plates hitting those, and that's it, and you should end up with a really nice result. Now, finally, we're into those bone areas. Now, for my dragon, I'm using black mixed in with a Sharptie, but you could use like a, like I use the field drab as well for bone. So whatever sort of bone you want. I'm just doing a sort of desaturated bone here. So we've got a little bit of black mixed in with the Sharptie, and this just gives our dark base. And so we just paint those bones. And again, I'm focusing on one area, completing it, moving on. The same strategy so that I end up with completed areas so I don't get sort of overwhelmed by it, because there are a lot of areas to paint on this dragon and you don't want to burn yourself out. So once that's done, then we move into the off of Sharptie, which is like almost full of Sharptie, but it's got a little bit of that dark color mixed in, and that's going to start to be our layer. So we start layering in using the tip of the brush and dragging down the length of the claws to get you that sort of lining happening on the bone, so that's serrations across the surface, and that gives you that sort of more realistic bone look when you've got a flat area to paint, like these bones are sculpted. And then into that straight Sharptie where we're hitting it again, the edges of the claws, etc., doing those sort of feathered lines down the claw to give it that sort of feeling of texture. And then into that Sharptie mixed with white, which is our first real like strong highlight. And so you're just building in some lights down the top edge of the claws, and yeah, just trying to give it a little bit of that sensation of sort of ribbing or lines down the bones, and that will give it that sort of realism without it being actually there, right? It's still a flat surface. And then finally some more white mixed in for your spot highlight, and that's just really for the tips and the edges. And again, we're all focused on the forward facing sides of all of this stuff, so we're not trying to do the whole thing in every detail all the way around. If you were to flip this model upside down, you would see tons of areas that are very dark or just dark blue or nothing at all, and that's fine, because we're really just trying to be efficient and get this model done in an acceptable time frame, which is roughly, as I said in the beginning, roughly around 3 days. And there we go, one Krondys all done. Let's take a look. So yeah, you can see how it comes up. This is just one of those sort of fast methods to get it done when you really don't want to do the mini that you're painting, right? So for me, it's dragons, and I think it comes up pretty well. You've got those more faster techniques and the dry brushing and so on, and the airbrush, and then you're layering over that with these line edge highlights and so on to sharpen up those details around the focal points across the model, on the hands, the feet, the tail, etc., around the face, importantly, and that sort of thing, to give it a little bit of focus so that it feels higher quality than maybe it actually is if you look really close. And when you put it in with your collection, it'll fit in nicely and won't stick out. And that's what I find is the best sorts of techniques when you're trying to get something done fast in your collection, to try to keep it in range of your other minis that you paint, so that you feel good about it. And I think that generally ends up being the best. If you really rush it, I find that it's generally the model that you don't like as much. You sort of put it aside, that sort of thing. But if you can get it to that point where it's just cusping on your normal standard or the way that you like the models to look, then generally speaking, you'll feel better about it, and it makes it more fun when you're using it on the table. So I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that's given you maybe some ideas for your own mini that you may not want to paint, and maybe use some of these techniques to paint that mini, or you might be painting Krondys or dragons, that sort of thing. So I hope that's helped, and I'll leave a nice image for him at the end in the paint list as I normally do. But I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit that like button, subscribe button, it really helps me out, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.